Have you done that? Right. See, the very first impression the board gets, they have never met you, right? They never had any opportunity to meet you unless you belong to maybe, a cream of society. So, the DAF, which is in front of them, and they will have, as far as I know, the complete copy of DAF, both DAF 1 and DAF 2. And I believe everyone in the panel would have gone through your DAF, so all the columns. Now, so before you walk into the interview hall, the very first impression they have gained is from every single detail that you have mentioned in the DAF. And within that, to understand you better, to get a picture of who is about to, going to be interviewed, they are curious about certain aspects of your personality. So they open the DAF. Do you have any job experience? It can be yes. ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ವಾಲ್ಯೂಮ್ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಇಡಿ. It can be yes or no. And there are various types of jobs also, which I will be discussing about, and about which we cannot do anything about right now. Right? It is already mentioned in the DAF 1. And some of my words might be discouraging when I talk about the job, but you have to reconcile with the fact whether you have a gap or you may not be doing a very formal work. So you have to reconcile, you have to get used to the fact that there is some lacuna in your DAF. And then the most interesting part of the DAF is about your hobbies section. So we have, achievement, scholarships, prizes, medals, scholarships, and then sports, NCC, positions of distinction, leadership held in school, college, other extracurricular activities and interests. So if you notice, first there is a line that please give particulars at the university or state or national level in respect of, right? So that is the first line. Under that there are 4 sections, A, B, C, D. So the A is about prizes, medals, scholarships, right? And sports and NCC. And in the C, they are mentioning positions of distinction, leadership held in school or college. Again, in school or college, at state or national level, right? It can be implied that way, right? And then other extracurricular activities and interests. It is not like or interests, and interests such as hobbies, etc. So I made a clear distinction between hobby and interest in my previous session, that hobby is something that you actually do consistently. There is something tangible about hobbies, right? For example, numismatics, philately, right? Blogging regularly, or even reading books in a very consistent manner. So they all come under hobby. Or like doing something, it can be like gardening also, kitchen gardening, that you are consistent. Interests, there is also consistency in it, but the interest can be diverse, right? And interest is something that you might have developed lately, right? And you might have in the process of developing certain interests. So the interest can be specific. For example, you may be very much interested in the history of Egypt, right? So you are very much fascinated with the history of Egypt. So you keep Googling about history of Egypt, you keep reading about pyramids, what is there inside the pyramids, and all those emperors, where they were buried, and what was discovered in all these things, right? Similarly, it can be very specific related to technology, like environment and artificial intelligence. And the Google has come up with that quantum AI chip, right? Somebody very much interested in knowing the advancements, right, in the chip industry, right? That can be a interest also. So you may be from arts background or science background, but you are developing interest, right, out of curiosity. So wherever your curiosity is leading, so you are developing multiple interests. But can you talk about in depth about these interests? So that is the question that you have to ask first, right? So how do you know that you have diverse interests, right? So one template I had given in my previous session was, while preparing for the UPSC examination, you might have diverged a little bit and gone to the depth of certain topics. Maybe they are related to syllabus, maybe they are not related to the syllabus. So first identify all those topics, make a list of them. And within them, you have to filter, finalize maybe 2 to 3. My suggestion is maximum 3 distinct, unique topics, right? And you should have confidence. Now, I think tomorrow the DAF2 is going to open, and till 19th you have that window period to finalize these things. So before you finalize, you should be very much aware of the fact that when you mention something in the DAF, right, we don't know what kind of questions they may ask. So the kind of questions they ask always, comes from the fact that they are far more experienced, far more exposed. They might have done research in some of the topics that you may mention. They might have written books. They might have written a number of articles, right? They might have given, seminars in international forum or national. So on the topics that you have mentioned, and they might have authored certain reports also, right? So you should be aware of this fact before you mention it. And they don't expect you to be an expert in that, because it comes under the interest. You have to discuss enough to keep their interest alive, till the end, if the topic is being discussed. So you should know many details, right? The concepts related to the topic that you have mentioned, and the facts also, they are also important. And also there are 3 types of questions that come in the interview, right? And broadly, if I want to categorize, the very first question is factual, right? What is quantum computing, right? Or what is quantum chip? What kind of questions they come under the factual, right? Also asking you about a concept. What is this concept about? So even asking or testing your conceptual knowledge, that also comes under the factual. Second type of question is something related to opinion based, right? So here, like for example, the quantum AI chip, now it has come. So what do you think is going to be the implication for the tech industry? So the question can be extrapolated and asked, what do you think the implication of this invention of new quantum AI chip for the humanity, right? So how does it going to impact human society or human culture in coming years? There have been multiple videos. If you search YouTube, there are videos which are coming up where Nobel laureates, right, MIT scientists, they are discussing about the implications. So if you watch the Google video where they first gave it to the world in a video talk, so they have talked about its implications for pharmaceuticals, right, its implication for logistics and solving some other human related problems. So now there will be more research about it, right? So you may have to open certain journal, open such videos, right? You have to show keener interest, not just in listening, but also remembering, thinking about it, and also formulating your own opinion, right? Only if you are confident of doing something like this, then only you should mention it. The third question is something about case study, right? So where they will put you in a role, right? So let us say that, let us assume that it is kind of a Manhattan moment in the, in the computer science, right? So where there was atomic bomb and that changed, right, geopolitics, even the science and technology, right? So now with respect to the chip industry, if this is the Manhattan moment, right, you might have watched Oppenheimer, the movie, right? So where was I? Yeah, case study. So if they put you in the role, like if you are the chief scientist, let us say that you have written computer science as your graduation, and you have graduated from any college, NIT, IIT, or reputed college. So they might put you in a role that you are the CEO of Google, and it decides to come up with far more superior chip, something related to, which will have huge implications, right, in terms of, because nobody clearly knows about the implication. So what it has done is, you might have read about it, right? So what a supercomputer can solve in a septillion years, 1 followed by 25 zeros. So that is, the age is far more than the age of the universe. So it has done in 5 minutes, right? So it can lead us to finding solutions to, traveling, the interstellar travel, right? Or creating the huge big machines, right? You might have watched, it can be like, it might appear like, far-fetched imagination. So there have been movies where, there are big machines enough to destroy planets, something like that. It can be like many 100 years later. But it is going to redefine everything. So if you are in that position, are you going to invest? Are you going to, right, in inventing, or in finding out, in creating such kind of new invention, right? So they are putting you in a role, right? So this is something, based on what is happening currently. Or Manipur issue is there, right? In Ballari recently, 5 pregnant women tragically, died because of certain issues in the pharmacy, right? So they can put you in the role of CEO of Jilla Panchayat or SP or DC, and they may ask you, how are you going to solve this issue? How are you going to address or deal with this particular issue? What I have noticed is that if your answers are not inspiring in the beginning, so your questions, the nature of questions remain factual throughout the interview. In the very first 5 minutes, if your answers are not inspiring in the sense that you should evoke their curiosity, there should be an element of critical thinking in your answer, an element of analytical thinking in your answer, right? Ability to analyze, ability to, critically think. Critically think is not balancing the answer. Critically thinking is what? Having a very objective stance, right? You have conviction, you have an opinion, but which is based on logic and facts, right? But you are not balancing. So even the board hates, and even I hate, when people start their answer by saying that it has both the sides, it has positive and negative, it has advantages and disadvantages, it is a double-edged sword, right? So don't start your answer with that kind of statements, right? You have to show conviction. So there is always a dominant opinion in your answer, right? Whether you are believing in it or not believing in it. So why you are believing in it? So you should have solid reasons. So your opinion followed with the reasoning, right? Reasoning based on the concepts and the facts that you know. That is what is the analysis. So if somebody shows that kind of promise in the very first 5 minutes, so the questions move to opinion based questions and the role based questions, right? And that is, the onus is on you, that you have to, even if it is a factual question, somehow you have to come up with an interesting answer, right? Somehow you should start engaging them. The answer should have the ability to engage them in a further conversation related to that particular content of the answer, right? So if it doesn't engage them, the questions will become random, the questions will be mostly factual, right? And this happens when you are like nervous, right? When you go inside there and you sit in front of them, and if you are nervous, too conscious about yourself, and if you are overthinking, right? So then what happens? Sometimes you don't get the question correctly, right? You're still making sense of the question, and then you're not thinking deep, thinking enough. even if the question you have understood, because you're still making yourself comfortable, right? So what happens? You will utter what is obvious, right? Something that is uninspiring. You tell something that is very generic, very obvious. So during the next course of few days, right, you have to practice both thinking and discussing and saying things that is not obvious, right? You have to practice. Whether you practice in front of the mirror, whether you practice in a group discussion, whether in one-on-one mocks when I start doing from tomorrow, whether you do it in front of me, you have to do that consciously, right? I mean, you have to do it here. So you have to make it a habit. Otherwise, what happens in the interview, even, see, there is a DAF and there are two types of DAFs. One is inspiring in the sense that it has created high expectations. So you have written, you have authored papers and got them published in some international, national journals, and you have been blogging about big issues, and you are reading big books, right? And you are following big authors, something like that. So you might have mentioned them, and you've been writing about like technical issues and all. So what happens? And to match your hobbies and interest, your achievements and your leadership, so they may be complementing things, right? You would have got certain good scholarship, right? I have never seen anybody like any international scholarship, like national. What people write is HRD scholarship and NTSC scholarship. They write someone write Olympiad, they write, and if they have got scholarship from certain departments of the government, social welfare or backward, they write that also. But there are scholarships such as something called a Fulbright scholarship, right, where you get scholarship to study in a foreign university, right, where you get a scholarship to do internship in a very reputed institution or organization, or even in some ministries, right? So there are scholarships to there is Kalinga Ashoka Kalinga scholarship, or Teach India scholarship, something like that. There are Azim Premji University scholarships. So where you don a role of teacher, and you teach in underprivileged kids in backward regions. So there are such scholarships also. So they create higher expectation because your exposure is slightly higher compared to maybe other related DAFs. So there is another type of DAF where hobby, most of the things are blank. You're being your class representative, right? Nothing bad with respect to that. Many people would have mentioned it. If there are common elements, if what most people have mentioned, if that is there in your DAF, then the expectations are not so high. So you mention meditation, right? You mention walking, you mention watching movies, nowadays watching web series, and dancing, singing, like very few people do that, and nowadays like gymming, fitness, right? So that I'm seeing in more and more numbers. So these are like very routine ones. Gardening, cooking, like now more number of boys are mentioning cooking. I've seen that. So last 2 years the trend is that post-COVID I'm seeing boys mentioning cooking. And then to diversify cooking, they start cooking continental dishes, cooking South Indian dishes, cooking North Indian non-veg dishes, right? Cooking Punjabi, something like this. So meditation also, it has diversified. Transcendental meditation, right? Heartfulness meditation, mindful meditation, right? Tantric meditation, right? Something like this. So there are variety of meditation that people have come up with, but it is still meditation. So all of them don't create any much expectation. So you come as, come as an individual. I don't want to mention like ordinary or extraordinary. So there are no expectations. But there is a strategy in interview that, let us say that you've read n number of books, right? And you have been reading n number of magazines and n number of journals, and you know that you are confident that you have those elements of critical thinking, analytical thinking, which I talked about, and there is diversity, and you know that you can talk slightly deeply about certain issues, and you are aware of it. but you don't want to mention anything, right? So then I think, but that depends on you, because the first question could be something random. I don't think they will ask questions on meditation or, cooking, because if so many people have mentioned them, right, they would have already exhausted asking questions, or they would have stopped asking questions, right? But they may ask also, we never know. But the probability is that they may not ask. So the question can be anything related to random current affair. But within the random current affair, what I have noticed is that their interest mainly lies with respect to Indian economy or international economy, geopolitics and technology, plus national issues related to policy, majorly, right? So these are the four broad categories where you have to dig deeper all the issues, and you have to master them. So there can be a random question about technology, a random question about some environmental policy. So today I saw that, they want to amend disaster management rules 2005. There is a news about it. So it can be something related to that. Now in the very first question, if you, answer really well, but the DAF is still not matching, right? So they will be very happy with that kind of performance, right? So in my personal opinion, instead of filling DAF with so many things, right, the DAF must be totally honest. There should not be any element of dishonesty in the DAF, right? And while performing in the interview also, there should be total honesty. The honesty is always rewarded. I keep saying, even saying no, I don't know is a very good answer in the interview, in UPSC interview. Saying I don't know 10 times is still a very good response in the interview. Rather than many people get affected by it, after saying I don't know for like 2 to 3 questions, then they come under pressure to answer the next question, right? So you should not do that. If you don't know, right? You have to, you have to be like that. There should not be any kind of pretension, right? There should not be any kind of pretension that, pretending, again, not out of arrogance. You won't be pretending there, not out of arrogance, but because you are under so much pressure to perform, right? You think that, and unfortunately, subconsciously, what has happened is that, your entire preparation in this examination has been with respect to doing something predictable, in the sense that prelims, mains questions, right? So there is a predictability here. And for a topic, how much to make notes, how much to prepare, how much to remember. And if the question gets repeated, you can recall, right? You have luxury of time. So you can recall certain details and you can write. But interview is instant, right? In interview, it is instant. So what you can write in 250 words or what you can write in 1200 words. So within 30-40 seconds, you have to filter the best ideas, right? And present them within 40-50 seconds, right? So to develop that kind of thought process, right, is the major challenge right now in front of you. But that can be overcome, that you can definitely develop, because all of you who have cleared means don't lack in terms of knowledge, right? It is there, knowledge is there. It is just that, the knowledge so far how you have used was in a totally different orientation for a different purpose. But here it is to have a communication and engagement with the listeners, right? They must be curious about you and your responses. So in my hundreds of mock interviews, like for example, last year I didn't take many mocks. Before that, somewhere around 650 plus candidates, I took one-on-one mocks. Before that, around 550 candidates. Before that, around 400 or 350. So thousands of candidates, right? I have done these one-on-one mock interviews. And in last 5 years, I hardly remember, like 6 or 7 candidates, right? I mean, not because of my weak memory. I mean, exceptional performances, right? When they perform and go, you know that this is 200 plus. Sometimes I know, okay, give 190 plus. And in this, see, I share certain interests. I read, I used to read, I read, and I'm so much interested. I may not be an expert, I'm so much interested in almost everything. So whatever comes in DAFs. So I'm a very curious person, right? So I try to ask more open-ended questions, more opinion-based questions that force you to think critically, that force you to analyze the issue instead of randomly putting a fact in front of the interviewer. So what happens? We know that, right? So those qualities, if they become evident, right? We know that instantly this is the candidate who is going to get 190 plus or 200 plus. So you didn't have an opportunity to, talk about and discuss and think about whatever knowledge you have gained so far. Right? You've never sat alone for half an hour and thought about disaster management rules. Right? If you have done, that is to write an answer. Right? But not about to develop multiple opinions and multiple dimensions. The question can be asked from different dimensions. And putting yourself in a role, like maybe while writing case study, you might have thought about it, but again, that is also mechanical exercise, answering case studies in mains. So when the question is given to you, then you think and write. Right? When you're practicing, then you think and write. But that is to write, right, in 3.5 pages. But not to imagine yourself in the role of a district collector of Wayanad. Right? Why still the housing is delayed, building houses for the victims of the recent flood and landslide, it is still delayed, right? So what are all the different aspects of this particular issue, right? And Karnataka wants to build homes for the victims there, and there is opposition in Karnataka, right? So what are the political reasons? So you have to be curious and you have to start thinking about them, right? So if you're not doing this exercise, in the interview, you end up giving very lame, very mechanical, uninspiring answers. And it is very difficult, to tell you that, you are at 150 level, 160 level, or, 170 level. So we want to tell you, and we want to inspire, we want to motivate, we want to guide you to become the 200 plus, because this is your ultimate opportunity. This is your ultimate opportunity. So 741, I think, was the cutoff last year. And if somebody had scored 206 plus in the interview, they would be still in the list. Right? Assume that though you have cleared mains, and believe that even if you have cleared mains, you are just 1 mark above the cutoff. Right? You are just 1 mark above the cutoff. Right? So don't be sure about, having scored better marks above the cutoff. Just assume and give every moment, every minute to the interview preparation, and for God's sake, don't try to balance it now. Prelims, optional, you want to do mains answer writing. Don't do that. Even if it is at the cost of next attempt. Right? So my personal suggestion is that give everything you have, like, morning to midnight, whatever time you have got, to prepare better for the interview. Right? So the interview starts, I think, somewhere January 1st week. Any idea? January 2nd week. Beginning of 2nd week. Right? And then, so they may go on till the April. I think they will again do phase wise, the way they did last year. So it will go on till April. Even if your interview is in April. Right? My personal suggestion, don't try to balance prelims and interview. Because, as I said, even if your marks is just the cutoff or 1 mark above the cutoff, you still have chance to get into the service. Once you see your name in the result, you can sacrifice next attempt, I'm sure. And you will do that. Right? And you can do that. So there is not going to be any kind of pressure around you. Right? So you can do that actually. And then you can borrow 1 more year. But to borrow that 1 more year, right? So you have to prepare so intensely, right? And this preparation must not be again, the way it used to be, right? it used to be making notes, right, and revising optional, right. It should not be in that manner. It should be more of intellectual in nature, more depth. So with respect to this depth, what we have to start doing is every keyword in the DAF, right, starting from your name, right, starting from your name. Let's say Ranjit is the name, like, so there, if you have seen this transcript, there are occasions where they have asked the meaning of your name. What's your good name? Huh? Danya. Okay. And your good name? Pratibha. Okay. And you're from? Darjeeling. Okay. So, name, right? Yeah. So before I proceed with this, just a kind of word of caution. The priority should not be given to, there are certain keywords, right? For example, your district, your place of birth. Don't spend too much time on these things, right? Once you gain the confidence of engaging them, right, on issues of importance, right? So they stop asking questions related to these stuff, like, what is famous in your district, or issues related to your state or something like that. So they'll be more interested in discussing broader issues that have a huge implication for the large number of people, right? People of state, people of India, people of the world. They want to discuss those issues. But sometimes what happens, I've seen people spending lots of time, digging deep about the district, all these things, right? So the name, just the meaning, if there is any link with the mythology, or if there is any link with some other language or something, right? And then Kannada, mother tongue, whichever mother tongue, the language related issues, right? Issues related to the language. So now, if we are in the south, then we have this issue of, one, the language is dying, we are concerned about it. There is imposition of another language that we are worried about. There is another issue of dialects within the Karnataka. For example, they also feel discriminated, right? So, and then the classical status and other related issues are there. So make a list of issues. So once you make such kind of lists, you have to start from the bottom, from the very basic. For example, what is language? I mean, how do you define language? So language we take it for granted. So if I ask, okay, define language, we all know language, what it is. No, start from there, right? Start from there. And then you have Karnataka, and then you have pin code, right? Pin code. I mean, I'm just curious. The question is not going to come, right? What is the basis of this pin code? Be curious. Be curious why there are 6 digits in the pin code. So, yesterday, I think a few days ago, I was talking to a candidate who gave interview last time. He was asked about his PAN number, and he was asked to explain, each letter and alphanumerical. What do they connote, right? So he was asked to do that, because you mentioned PAN also, I think, in the end. There is, I think, if it is OBC or something, I have seen that PAN number also, right? Aadhaar number is there. Father's PAN number, right? So, PIN, that is there, right? And then, of course, name of the father, name of the mother, I don't think they will ask their meaning, but there is nothing wrong in knowing it, right? If you are curious about knowing the meaning of your name, why not be curious about knowing the meaning of names of your parents also, right? It takes few seconds. And then father's profession and mother's profession. So this is very important. Sometimes if they are teachers, right, if they are into field of medicine, if they are industrialist, self-employed, or into public sector, right? So you have to thoroughly know about that particular organization, or that particular profession, or that particular field. Agriculture. So agriculture in and out, right? Mostly, what you have studied for mains, the same content, but here the orientation is in terms of mostly opinion based questions or the developments that are happening right now in the field of agriculture, right? For example, the farmer protest, they are being stopped. Again, Delhi, they are not allowed to go and protest. So it can come as a case study. It can be an opinion based question, right? So, and then your district name, right? Like here he has mentioned Chikbalapur. So with respect to district, what I've seen people doing mostly, they go with the factual things. It's okay. But give more importance to mostly the societal and cultural aspects than geographical, economic and historical aspects. Right? Culture, there is history to culture also, but they would be more interested in terms of talking about more of societal and cultural aspects. So there are districts where there are these, still these practices like, Devdasi, still practice. Child marriage is mostly prevalent. There are districts where, large scale malnutrition. So, yeah, border districts, yeah. Some of them belong to Bijapur, Bagalkot. So we see that, right, in Koppal, and there is caste discrimination in many districts. So if your district is known, infamous for such kind of negative issues, so I think if they ask you very broad question like what is special about your district, right? You can say that there are definitely many positive, but unfortunately my district is infamous for these practices, right? So it opens up, right, discussion. You can move into social issues and start discussing about them. And bit of history. Don't go into the too much of depth unless your district is historically important. If there's a historical place, a fort or a temple or a well or some inscription or something like that, so then you must be knowing about it, right? So recently in Karnataka there is a place in Gadag district, Lakkundi. If you read Kannada news, you will know that large number of artifacts, right? So they were collected from the villagers. What happened? There used to be some kind of principality there, and over a period of time, people started building homes there. They used whatever they got from those historical places, and that kept in their homes, coins, some those artifacts, sculptures, everything. So there are, I don't know, hundreds of them have been collected, and they are creating a museum. So you have to be just curious, what is the time period, and what is the, which historical period it particularly belong, what is the significance of that historical period, and how the present place, Lakkundi, right? So he is placed in with respect to the historical significance. So how the culture, society has evolved over a period of time. So that you should be knowing about it, right? So and then, unfortunately, like here he has mentioned PCMC, physics, chemistry, maths, computer science. Some people write physics, chemistry, computer science, mathematics. Sometimes, their eyes go to physics, chemistry, maths, right? No, it has happened. So I'm not making it up, right? So that happens only when the other part of the DAF is weak or your performance in the beginning is little weak. So now don't start preparing for physics, chemistry and all, right? You straight away say you don't know. But if you are a BSc graduate or MSc graduate, if you are an engineer, right, at least a few basic questions of chemistry and physics you should be able to answer, right? The very basics of them, right? And secondly, you have to, these are two ends of a spectrum, the very basics of the thing, right? There is, for example, can you explain the structure of an atom, right? Basic. What is neutron? What is electron? Something like that. What is quark? Something like that. It's a very basic thing. On the other end of the spectrum, is related to physics, chemistry, biology. What are the latest technological developments that have taken place? Right. So you can start from knowing who all won the Nobel Prize recently, who won the Fields Medal, right, if it is mathematics. So what are the other prominent internationally, international top awards and prizes in these categories? So if you go through them, then you will know that, right, what have been the recent trends, developments. And of course, the Hindu and other standard newspapers and magazines will be every week writing about these developments. You should have a basic knowledge of the latest developments in these fields. So don't ignore this particular aspect, right? So even if you mention PCMC, right, there is a chance, because as I said earlier, technology is always an important area of curiosity and it is becoming more dominant also. Right. So going forward, what happens? Inevitably, there are going to be questions on technology in some or other form. So you have to be very well versed and aware of technological developments. And then comes the graduation. So mechanical, civil, electrical, E&C, whatever stream of engineering that have been done. So there also these two extremes, the basics, what you studied in first year, right? And there are two types of questions. Then the other end of the spectrum, one is the application questions, right? So the concepts you have learned, testing their applicability and your ability to apply them. For example, this flyover, in Bengaluru from Yeshwanthpur, from Gorguntepalle to Nelmangla, I think. So there is a flyover and it had an issue with it, right? And IASC scientists and I think another IIT scientist, they studied and they realized that, it was not fit for heavy vehicles to commute on it, right? And they stopped that and then they repaired it. So if you're a civil engineer, right, they may be curious about knowing what went wrong and how it was fixed while it was still operational. Lighter vehicles were moving on in this particular flyover, but it was being repaired, right? So what was the technology used or what method that was used, and what are the different types of flyovers, what are the different types of, or innovations that have come in this field, particularly building bridges and everything. So, and also today in the news, Nitin Gadkari, there is a news that he is ashamed that the number of road accidents in India are not reduced, in fact they have increased. He has given a statement. So you being a civil engineer, if you mentioned as a civil engineer here, so how do we prevent, right, these road accidents? Through civil engineering techniques or technologies. They can just restrict to that. So there are so many aspects to preventing these accidents, right? So, but they may want to know from your perspective, what is the best way to build these, roads and highways to minimize number of deaths on road. So that is the application. So on the other hand, again, the advancements, latest. So when I ask about, very latest innovation that has taken place in the field of, let us say, civil, computer science or mechanical, people still give, 5G, 4G, right? So these kind of 3D printing, civil, if I ask. So you are not updated, right? Don't go to interview hall without being updated. Don't do that, right? Show that you are a learner, right? You have been constantly learning. That quality is very important in the interview, right? You are constantly updated, learning. Even if you didn't like mechanical or civil, which you did, right? You've been curious about it. You cannot say that, you did for the sake of doing, or, you are not interested. And there is one important aspect in the interview, there should be consistency in your answers, right? Consistency in your answers. So you may be asking like suddenly why this came up. So in why IAS answer, you may say that, you joined engineering for the sake of, you are always interested in these things, right? And here you may give like very good answers with respect to this technology related and all. So here you are contradicting, right? So there should not be any contradiction, there should not be any inconsistency. So what you have given in your first answer, you should be mindful. You should know that when you are giving another answer, that you had given this particular answer response. That is why honesty is important. If there is honesty, there is consistency. If there is dishonesty, there is some contradiction, and then you will get caught, but they will not, do it on your face, right? Just they will note it down, and you will not be able to figure it out. Yeah, despite giving very good interview, why you scored low marks, right? So be aware of this consistency thing, and thoroughly update whichever field. And another famous question that I ask, right? If people have written anthropology as their optional, political science or sociology or even psychology, right? Name any living 5 anthropologists, right? Nobody has given answer so far. Anthropology 300 plus, right? Previous attempts, right? They have never bothered even for a single day in their UPSC preparation 3, 4, 5 years to Google and search who are the living anthropologists or sociologists or prominent political scientists. Political scientists, those who write in Indian Express, their name they tell, right? But there may be even, good political scientists, right? So sociologists or in the field of psychology, doing some, breakthrough kind of research. So you have to be curious, even if it is humanities, even if it is science, you should know about them. So the people involved in your particular discipline, whether it is optional or whether it is this thing. So for example, if somebody has written BTech in architecture, right? So I'm curious to know, what kind of innovations are happening in the field of architecture, right? The marvels that are built. So, and if you see that, during Renaissance and after Renaissance, right? The kind of structures that are built, and even before the Dark Ages, the kind of structures that were built, Roman Empire and all. So they were intricate, aesthetically they were superior, right? And as we entered into modern era, so that quality is gone, right? So I may be just curious, why? What happened, right? So I want you to give a very thoughtful answer with respect to, based on the history, right? The societal, cultural developments that have taken place over a period of years, right? So you cannot give very generic, uninspiring answer in that moment. You should have thought about it. So whatever graduation you have pursued, so be curious about what is happening with respect to that. And then there may be post-graduation. Post-graduation plus job experience is actually valued in interview, right? But don't feel bad that, you don't have post-graduation and, you don't have job experience. That can always be compensated with extraordinary performance, right? If there is gap, let's say 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, and you did your BE or BTech or BSc or BCom, law or medicine in 2015 or 16, and since then you've been preparing for the examination, no work experience, absolutely. So you will have that, a bit of guilt or, bad feeling that, that what if they ask me the question? So some people, it's kind of a forced error. Some people do mistake here. So they say that I've been writing content for a coaching institution and they mention it. That is wrong. That is not a job, right? From your perspective, you might have earned and you've written that. If you've written, as I said in the very beginning, you have to make peace with it, right? Don't mention the word coaching in the interview, right? Even if the question is asked, you have to straightforward give the honest answer in a confident way. But rest of the interview, you have to, right, do really well. That they, forgive you or, excuse you, or they just forget about this particular. That actually happens in the interview, right? Psychologically, we tend to remember the best moments, right? The best answer that you have given, rather than the mistake you have committed in the interview. So that is a very big advantage. So you have to create that advantage for yourself. So after that question, any question that follows, you have to be even more involved, right? You should be even more confident. Don't let that question sink your confidence. So when I said reconciling or making peace with it, you have to go through that experience multiple times before going to interview. Now, psychologically, in a group discussion, let people ask critical questions, right? Or too opinionated questions. Let people judge you, right? Face that. Make peace, become strong, right? I mean, this is important because you should not carry even ounce of guilt in the interview hall, right? The moment you carry any kind of self-doubt, guilt, or little bit of inferiority complex, that impacts your performance. So you have to make peace with it. It's okay. It is kind of norm in UPSC preparation, right? Majority people go through that. So be very strong with respect to that. But my understanding is that people with post graduation and job experience slightly better valued than this, right? And I used to think I was wrong, like if I told you this, let's say 3 or 4 years ago. But last 3-4 years, I'm seeing a trend. People with these, right? If it is again from a very good institution, doing job in a very reputed organization, and you gone to interview, it is slightly advantage, right? But that doesn't mean that they are, discarding or like judging people if people don't carry these credentials. It is not like that. They are not judgmental at all. But the expectation is very high, right? Expectation is high that, okay, you have been studying like 5-6 years, doing nothing, right? Answer my questions with lots of depth, right? At least, can you do this? That is their expectation. But if you fail there also, then obviously the marks are going to get affected. So that you have to take care of it. And I mean, see, I'm honest with you, right? It is not to discourage or anyone. I'm honest with you because the way you align your preparation should be in this way, right? Instead of thinking about I have a gap, I haven't worked, right? So try to fill that, with whatever other things you're going to mention, gain lots of depth in that, and think deeply about all those things. With respect to post-graduation, the same thing, whatever thing you are going to mention. As part of the course, you might have presented papers, you might have given seminars, you might have done internship, right? Which if you are going to mention in the achievement section, right? I have seen people, they have filed patents, they got patents also, right? In previous DAFs, I have seen people. So definitely expectation will be very high. And similarly presented paper, right? Given seminar, attended or did something in an international symposium or something. So that also you have to be, if it is technical, you have to give technical answer, right? Interview is not a place where you give generic answer. So for prelims and mains, it used to be general. Interview, it has to be specific, right? In interview, you can speak technical, right? If it is related to your field, let's say you are a doctor, neonatologist or pediatrician, right? Done super specialization in medicine. So don't hesitate to speak and never assume that they don't know. And sometimes I get angry, some people say that, so what if they don't know? Right? As if this fellow is more, expert. No. Even if you are extraordinarily expert, right? You might have done things from AIMS and born and brought up in AIMS, right? So even then, don't assume that they don't know. right? If they don't know, there is going to be a follow-up question. You just mentioned something this, okay, can you elaborate? Right, can you explain? Right, but that doesn't mean that you have to sound, when I say you have to sound technical, you should not sound like an expert. Also, you should not sound like a teacher also. People do these two mistakes. When they want to explain about, the project or patent or something, the tone becomes like, like an expert. I know this, something like this. Or sometimes it is like, assuming they don't know, they try to explain it. Right, Instead of that, you have to say, sir, as you know, right? Assume that they know it. Even if you are going to use a technical word or a concept, as you know, right? They may say, I don't know, but then you can explain it, right? But assume that they know, right? Assuming that they know results in a conversation, right? Assuming that they don't know, whether you sound like an expert or like a teacher trying to explain things to a kid. So this you have to take care, right? And with respect to job experience, right? So there was an incident that one of the candidates had mentioned the name of the coaching institution also, and had famously said that UPSC is not going to be kind, going to punish. So that candidate indeed got low marks. It's a different. But before getting low marks, so there was a rude mail. And how can you say that? Mentioning this will result in low marks or something. So the very idea is why I think they don't like mentioning coaching industry. The very idea of this examination is anti-coaching. They don't want any individual who is molded or prepared in a very particular setup, right? They want more original, more individualistic, right, candidates. So we have developed certain required qualities, right, on their own. So the coaching industry kills critical thinking, right? The coaching industry prepares people, in a predictable way. So if you are preparing and working in the very industry, right, you're not doing justice to their expectation. That is the idea, right? But unfortunately, many people are not aware, right? So of course, working in the coaching industry, it's fine. It exists, right? But it goes against the very ethos of the UPSC. Unfortunately, you can blame me, right? We recruit people, and that is an unfortunate thing. And I've said so many times, we exist because of the poor education system. I tweeted about it and I've talked about it. We exist because of the poor education system. If there is no inequality in education, right? If people are getting standard, uniform, high quality education everywhere, we don't come into picture, right? So maybe we may mentor. There are mentors for in other fields like sports, like chess, Gukesh and all. Like he talked about his mentors also. So because it goes against the ethos of UPSC, you should not either work in this industry, or even if you have worked, maybe better to. It's not a full-time employment also. What I've seen people, they work for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, right? Even as a faculty or even as a content developer, evaluator. So you work for very small period and then you quit it, right? It doesn't come under as formal employment. It's kind of informal employment. So better not to mention it, but you have already, I don't know how many of you have done that. If you have already mentioned that, whatever, I don't want to repeat. I have already talked about it. But if you have worked in a very formal institution, right, the nature of the institution, the mandate of the institution, right, the significance of that particular institution, its contribution, if it is related to, mostly, if it has employed you, it is contributing to development, right? It can be economic development or societal development, and you should specifically know the CSR aspect of that particular company, right? So what is CSR? what are the works the company has done with respect to CSR, what has been the impact of the CSR, are there any lacunae, were you involved in those activities, right? So you should have social outlook. Even when you are working in a private organization, if you are preparing for UPSC, so there is always a social outlook, social concern, right? So that you have to show as part of your response. So that is with respect to the job. And then prizes, medals, scholarship, right? So if you are university topper, university gold medalist, those definitely you should mention. And then if even in your 4th, 5th, 6th standard, you have been a state level topper, right, or national level topper, regional topper, so that also you can mention. Or if you have written for example, I have seen people mentioning that they got 2nd rank in GATE examination, right? So if there are higher education entrance examinations or other competitive exams of national importance or national level, if you have got ranks in them, that also you can mention. For example, you got all India rank 2 in CAPF exam, something like that. So that also I think you can, people have mentioned in the past, you can mention. So that is about, like, it comes under the medal and achievements, there is because etc. It comes under the achievements, right? And then if you are under the sports, you don't have to mention that member of football team, not like that. Here sports, NCC, etc. Like NCC, if it is A, B, C, you can mention. If it is NSS, you can mention. If it is Scouts and Guides, that also you can mention. It come under etc. Sports, they are not expecting you to be, state or district or national level sportsman here. Like, were you involved, even if it is in school or college days, were you involved in some sports? Maybe you would have played table tennis, badminton, volleyball, football in your school, college days, that you can mention, right? Any 1 or 2 sports that you actually played and still interested in them. May not be playing them, but you are following the developments in that particular sport. If you are not following developments in that particular sport, don't mention it. Because I am more interested in knowing the developments, not how you played, right? That is not going to be the discussion point in the interview, right? How you played in the school. So it's about, if I mention the captain, which comes in the next, positions of distinction of leadership held in school, college. So there you can mention again, you are the captain of your college team that played at state level or something, right? So there I can ask, with respect to leadership, I can ask questions. But here it's about the latest developments, like technological developments. New technologies might have been introduced in the sport that you have mentioned. There may be international issues with respect to sports. It can be like, what do you call, drug abuse, like doping and other things, right? So issues related to that particular sport. Mention only if you have been following them, right? So otherwise, just because you played 4 or 5 different sports during school, college, just don't mention them. Position of distinction, leadership held in school, college, right? So you might have been general secretary of certain clubs. You might have headed certain teams in your school, college days. That also you can mention. There is one confusion here with respect to what they have mentioned. Some people mention about their leadership roles in their companies. For example, you are employed and in your company you are leading a team, right? Maybe with respect to research or with respect to developing certain thing, right? So my suggestion, even if it is related to that, please mention it. Just because it has mentioned school and college, don't leave out if you have gained a certain leadership position right now as part of a formal organization, right? So that better to mention it. So coming to extracurricular activities and interests, right? So here, yeah, so can you mention them? So it is supposed to be a workshop. So regarding that 45 minutes, I will spend time. workshop in the sense that I want you to come here. I'll be calling you, and as a beginning of your interview preparation, so I'll be asking certain questions, and I'll make you people also ask questions to some of you who have cleared mains, and then we'll discuss few questions. How to frame better answers, how to prepare for such kind of questions. With respect to this hobbies and extracurriculars and interests section, if you are mentioning only cooking, gardening, watching football, playing and watching cricket, watching movies, something like this, is very remote possibility that they are going to discuss them. But if you are going to mention within movies, for example, watching Japanese or Chinese movies or East Asian movies, if you are particularly interested maybe in them, or maybe French and German movies, right? Or only award-winning movies, or only classical movies, or movies which are there in IMDb top 250, right? Or watching war movies, right? Or watching movies, that have the focus is on the social issues, or maybe within that particularly related to women and children, right? So if we can narrow down to a particular genre or particular theme, then definitely I think they'll be interested in asking few questions, right? But if you just mention watching movies, like they may ask, okay, what kind of movies you watch? So it's a Pushpa 2, right? Of course, there is an issue with respect to that. I can ask questions from them because the way the culture is evolving, where anti-hero is hero, where villain is hero nowadays, where criminal is the hero, right? Where criminal is the president. The trend we are seeing around the world, right? So the way it is there, I don't think I can ask a question on that. And there is smuggling, and there is criminal activities, there is money laundering, and there is buying power, purchasing power, whatever it is. There are issues with respect to that also. But you should be, that's what, you should, whatever movies that you have watched, you should have read reviews on them, critical reviews on them, right? And you should have thought about them. The movies from a cultural perspective, societal angle, right? And also technology, how technology is shaping the movie industry. So bring technological aspect in most of the topics and interest and hobbies that you are mentioning. Another quality that you have to develop is that when you are preparing individually for every keyword, you should start linking 2 to 3 areas of DAF. For example, let us say that you have hobby of watching cricket, and you are computer science graduate. So I can link computer science and cricket, right? So I can ask question related to how computer science, developments in computer science are shaping, or the game of cricket, or the user experience of watching it, or something like this. So like that, try to, wherever you can logically link. There should be logic. You cannot link randomly, right? So try to link. It can be two totally diverse things. Try to bring them together and frame a question on them, right? So this is very important because in some other question, naturally you will start giving answers with different dimensions. If you think like this, and if you prepare like this, some other answer in some other question will be more rich, right? Because you are weaving kind of a story within the DAF, right? By bringing them together, and because combined together you are a personality, right? So connecting the dots, so that famous Steve Jobs, right? It's kind of thing like that. So if you connect everything, then you'll be more confident about who you are, and you'll be able to convince the board, right? And I just want to know what are the hobbies that you want to put. If you can just, or do you want to maintain secrecy in that? There is that phenomenon also, right? People steal hobbies. Huh? People steal. So they do that. They have done that actually. So I can prepare in 10 days. Yeah, right. Hmm? Diary writing. Okay. Then no. Avoid mentioning self-help books. Hmm? Reading self-help books. So I've seen people there also when they mention reading books. So when I ask what kind of books that you read, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, Atomic Habits, right? You Can Win. Nothing wrong in that. So there is a phase in us, right? Somebody might have read in school days, in the beginning of the college days, in the beginning of the preparation days. There is nothing wrong with respect to that. But their expectation is slightly higher in the interview panel. They can not talk about self-help books as part of the discussion, right? So because they are mostly related to psychological aspect, self-help, like personality development. So it is good that you have read them, but my personal suggestion, better not to mention them, because so one is, I don't want to start discussion with respect to, the aspect. Basically, what do they deal with, right? Some books talk about better communication, improving communication. Some books, better thinking. Some books talk about becoming mentally tough. Some books, how to maintain calmness, how to be stoic, right, in whichever situation. Some books talk about how to make profits, how to make friends, how to influence others, right, how to be good in whichever social situation you are in. You are actually applying what you learned in those books there, right? So discussion won't happen usually. So better use whatever you have read, apply them rather than mentioning them there, right? So yes, very good. Pranayama, good. Yeah, what kind of books you read? Very good. Cooking, good. So this reading English literature, is it modern literature or classics? No, it's okay, but you read good number of books. Can you give examples?
Little Women is one of my favorite.
Okay. Apart from that book, what are the other books? Classics. Oh, Henry. Okay, very good. What about novels?
Gone with the Wind.
So then mention short stories, right? English literature, specifically short stories, right? What happens when you mention reading English literature? So now when you say within that classics, now I was thinking, okay, War and Peace, Leo Tolstoy, Crime and Punishment, Dostoevsky or something, books by Dickens, and like there are so many people, right? So my expectation is suddenly like that. Then I might frame question with a bias, directly put it in front of it. So you may be like, no, I haven't read that. Then I will ask another book, no, I haven't read that. So if you mention that reading specifically short stories, so which are done really great authors, maybe you can add to them. You can read few more short stories in the short duration, and maybe you can talk about that, right? Cooking also, maybe if you want them to if you're really passionate about cooking and you've been experimenting with cooking and you've been following great shows related to cooking and trying to, innovate, do something new. So I think mention that in a way that, see, there is intellectual curiosity when it comes to cooking also. There is an intellectual aspect to cooking also. It is not just cooking for, taste and survival. So if it is something like that, if you've been reading about new recipes, like let's say New York Times or some international magazines or something, and trying to experiment, so you can be little bit elaborate and mention in that way. Only if you're doing that, right? So otherwise, you can just mention it as cooking. Hmm. No, it's okay. I mean, hmm. Hmm. Very good. Like, can you give example when you say constitution and law? Hmm. Okay. Hmm. So don't mention like constitutional and law because both become a very big word, especially law. So you can say reading non-fiction specifically related to constitutional issues, or maybe if it has a political issue, so that also you can mention, or if it is related to development, or if it is related to democracy, right? So mention that way. Reading non-fictions related to democracy, constitutional issues. Legal issues, then we can mention legal issues. Instead of law, mention legal issues. Right. And what kind of fiction you used to read during college days? Acha. That we can mention the reading fiction, especially thrillers, crime thrillers, comma. Now reading non-fiction related to these things. Okay. Yeah. So you want to go with only these two? Yeah, yeah. Good. Writing? Okay. Good. Yeah. So good that you mentioned the first one, right? Writing poems. I mean, I don't want to offend you, but write this particular hobby only if you are seriously reading poetry. If you're not reading poetry, don't write writing poetry as your hobby. The expectation is that when you mention, writing poetry, that you are being reading poetry, whether it is in Kannada or whether it is English or Telugu, whichever language, right? So if you're not doing that, better not to mention, because I've seen that people write, school, college, we write poetry, but that must be complemented with reading serious poetry. But I see that people don't do that, right? Are you doing that? Are you reading poetry? Like which Kannada or English? Hmm? Kannada poetry. ಯಾರ್ poetry ಓದ್ತಿರೋದು? ಭಾವಗೀತೆಗಳು. Okay, then good, very good. So in that case, you can mention Kannada poetry. Reading and writing Kannada poetry. Not just writing poems, reading and writing Kannada poetry or poems, right? So that you need to mention. And listen to all the Bhava Gites and Dara Bendre, Kuvempu, ಯಾರ್ಯಾರು ಬರ್ದಿದಾರಲ್ಲ, so all them keep listening them regularly and try to understand the meaning, try to think about them. You should be able to talk from a literary perspective, right? So when you talk about them, there should be that literary aspect to it, right? Essence. So you should not be very mechanical, dry way of talking about it, right? So basically, the passion should be evident, right? The passion that you really love, enjoy, and passionate about poetry. Fundamentals of share market and stocks and trading. You read books related to that. Okay. So then don't mention books, right? Maybe you can mention that reading about developments in the stock market, something like reading articles or just reading about developments in stock market. So when you mention books, so that becomes like big, right? The expectations will be more high. Like different languages, how many languages? Korean. Mention the languages better. You can mention, what did you say? Watching or following? Exploring, yeah. Exploring cinemas in multiple languages, especially maybe Southeast Asian and Spanish, something like that. Then what happens when you say multiple languages? India itself, there are so many languages. That anyway, that is kind of evident, implied. So you don't have to elaborate that. But if you mention only exploring cinemas in different languages, it might give impression that, Telugu, Tamil only. Right. If you mention Southeast and all, then it is better. But B, as I said, in the course of the discussion, you have to be very much aware that, you have to gain lots of new perspectives and depth with respect to, these things. You should really talk. The languages also come here. It cannot be only related to movies. I may ask, the nature of Southeast languages. So you are watching Tamil, right? You are watching Telugu. How their language different compared to, our Dravidian languages. Right. I'm just curious. I mean, because if you are watching those movies, right? You are listening to those languages. So it is out of curiosity, have you checked, what is the origin of those languages? Is there any similarity? Thai and Acha. That's what. That's good, very good. So there might have been cultural influence also when these people were ruling some parts of the Southeast Asia, right? So just try to know that also. That's what, like which topic? See, already your DAF is getting, dense. So there are already constitution keyword, democracy is there, legal issues is there, right? So those three are enough to engage you for 20-30 minutes. So now again, explainer videos like related, if you mention technology, I think that is better. There should be, if you are watching technology related videos, right? So for example, we were talking about quantum chip, artificial intelligence. So if you are watching those videos, maybe you can mention that. So there what you can do is that you can, draw their attention away from your engineering discipline. So by mentioning something related to quantum computing or something, if you're really genuinely interested in that, so they will ask more questions from this area than going to, which is your stream, engineering, civil, yeah. Your assistant engineer. That is there. Like with respect to that, you have to be thorough with all these procurement related issues, tendering related. So both your technical aspect and non-technical aspect of civil engineering. Technical, more technical. Isha Kriya, okay. No, that you cannot bring in hobbies, right? If you, yeah. So with respect to that, avoid mentioning mentoring juniors, mentoring underprivileged, teaching underprivileged kids. It's kind of patronizing. You know the meaning of pat? No, if you've been doing that, if you've done passionately, then definitely do it. Right? I was speaking from the perspective of, certain Delhi candidates in their room, they would have taught one children of maid or, some basics. Then they mentioned teaching children of underprivileged people. Right? Not that one. As part of the internship, assignment, or some kind of a serious activity, if you have done that you should mention. That you can put under, I think, leadership role. Leadership role. What exactly you did? Which kids? Mm-hmm. What is the name of the NGO? You and I. Okay. When did you do? How long you did that? Mm-hmm. Acha, good. So that you mention under here, position of distinction leadership held in school, college. You can mention here also other extracurricular activities. As part of the activities also you can mention here. So it's not a serious, distinction or issue, right? So maybe you can mention there, or you can mention if you have really done it for a year, then you can write in the same manner that taught kids of this section in this region as part of U and I NGO for a year. You can mention like that in the extracurricular activities. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to read books like geopolitics if you've been following some famous authors, famous columnists, writers from standard magazines and newspapers, that is sufficient. I think that is better to mention reading and watching podcasts on geopolitical developments, right? But my suggestion, even if it is limited period of time, try to read at least one book written by people like Henry Kissinger, right? At least one book. Because if you're going to mention only 2 hobbies, and one book on agriculture also, something latest, right? Latest innovations, technologies that are coming into agriculture, if you can read 2 books, I think that will be better. That gives more confidence. You can talk with confidence, when you read a book on that particular theme. So who is ready to come and stand here? I just want to ask few questions. And also going forward, I was planning to do a group mock here in this building in the evening, that if all of you are going to stay here, we will form group, and then we will make one. I used to do this in 15, 16, 17. So one of you will be sitting here, and they will be asking you questions, right? So this is to overcome any kind of inhibition, any kind of issue with respect to confidence that they have. I've seen people faltering here, getting nervous, but after doing it 2 to 3 times, they overcome it. And people sitting in the other end, they are mostly not kind, They take it as a ragging opportunity also sometimes. So they ask tough questions also now and then. So I think when they ask such kind of questions, how you hold yourself, right, without getting agitated, without getting underconfident. So how you are going to give a more objective answer. So I think that is important, and that actually helps a lot. And over a period of time, you will when you start doing group discussions, many dimensions open up with respect to alone. When you think about your hobbies or anything, it's difficult to generate many questions, right? So when people ask from different perspective, they ask it based on their understanding, their experience, their exposure, their reading. So many other possibilities open up, and you will be you can prepare from that angle also, right? So it actually helps. Maybe you can use the chat GPT. People are using that also. I don't think that is of much help, but still you can ask it to give you questions, not answers, right? To generate questions, not to generate answers, right? So you can ask it to generate different questions, mostly, So type it like, generate analytical, open-ended question on this particular hobby or this particular issue, right? So that for them you can prepare more holistically. And then I'm going to do one-on-one mocks, like this year, like full-fledged, the way I used to do before last year. And if I notice that your performance is not up to the mark, I do multiple mocks. right? And I have learned to be brutally honest also, right? I mean, in the beginning, I used to be like, bit diplomatic, not to hurt people, but without hurting people, I know how to tell it straight forward. So that actually helps people. And when I do mock interview, I don't try to sound like an expert. I don't try to dominate. It is basically to strike a conversation. Because I said I'm really very curious and I want to know stuff from you. I may not be knowing it, but I want to know it from you. It is not that I know and I'm testing it from you. It is I want to know. That is why I am asking these questions. So that is how a mock interview goes. And there have been occasions that some of the questions that I've asked have been repeated for the same candidate. So because I tend to ask more broad and open-ended questions, and I have my own way of testing, how deeply you think. I bring two abstract concepts together and try to ask questions. For example, what is the relationship between development and culture, right? So what is the relationship between democracy and capitalism, right? So it can be abstract or it can be the concept that is more objective. So when I bring them together, suddenly some people, they may be expert in knowing all about capitalism or about democracy. So when suddenly bring them together, right? So it takes time to synthesize, organize your thoughts, and you'll be like thinking what exactly to tell, right? So try to think from that perspective also, right? So try to bring, for example, if your optional is anthropology, more of culture, society, the way humans are evolving, and here you have put something else. So try to link them, those concepts. And right now we are living in this, technologically driven era. I told it already that everything should be linked with the technology, but technology and democracy, right? Technology and governance. Within technology, like AI and governance, AI and development, AI and disaster management, AI and agriculture, AI and health. Like, try to link such kind of topics with what is predominant right now in the discourse right now, whether it is technology or whatever it is. Regarding them, go to primary sources as part of the preparation. Never visit any coaching institution website. During interview phase, never go for anything related to the coaching institution with respect to gaining the knowledge, right? So try to read at least minimum 3 newspapers from now onwards in depth. One, the Hindu, the Indian Express, and one related to business and economics, Live Mint, Business Standard, or the Economic Times. And Deccan Herald is also a very good newspaper, right? If you are living in Bengaluru, so keep checking Deccan Herald paper also, because why in their editorial they keep publishing best articles from the New York Times. You don't have luxury to go to New York site because it's paid subscription. So here they pick important issues from those international newspaper, and now and then I have seen many times they are publishing those articles. So I think Deccan Herald is also a very important newspaper. So here, don't just read newspaper and leave it, right? Study them. I mean, that day, what are the most important, because the very job of newspaper is to not only to inform but also create public opinion, right? Information you will get, but with respect to what is it trying to do today, which opinion, right? What is the opinion of the editorial board? What is the opinion of the columnist about which issue that they have picked up, right? So you think, and then you have to perform, you have to act on them. There are 3 ways to do. One is writing about them without filter, in the sense that I don't know today which editorial has come. Let us say there is editorial about Gukesh winning, the world championship, right? So a legend born or something, they have put something like that. So with respect to that, your own 100 to 150 words. What do you think about this particular development? How is it going to impact the Indian chess? Right. So how is it? Does it have any geopolitical angle also? Earlier it used to be during Cold War. And just right from what are the different aspects, it is significant. What is there in the editorial, beyond the editorial? What you can think beyond the editorial also, if you can extrapolate. So that is what I meant by unfiltered. So try to write. So give work to your brain. Second, discuss. When you make group with like-minded people, and discussion should not be just among yourself. Discussion should also be with people more and better informed than you also. It can be your professors, it can be more experienced people like bureaucrats, right? Academicians. If you can catch hold of them related to any aspect of your DAF, better to have discussion. So for example, classical dance you mentioned, classical music you mentioned. So there are people who are experts in that. Just half an hour discussion with them, right? How is it evolving? What is happening? So that again helps. The third is practicing in front of either mirror, more better than mirror, my suggestion, mobile. Record your own videos, right? So let us say that, like why you want to become IAS, or any question related to hobbies. Like he said, legal studies and constitutional, how laws related to rape are evolving in India, right? So take your mobile in selfie mode and record your answer within 1 minute, right? Within 1 minute, and listen back. See that if your answer is mostly factual, or whether it is balanced with respect to fact and opinion. Balancing with respect to fact and opinion, not balancing with respect to opinion, right? So is there any loophole in your answer, logical fallacy or something, right? So that you have to check. Will this question lead to counter question or follow-up question? After your response, it can be counter question. They don't agree with your opinion, they are countering you, right? Follow-up question, they are agreeing, they are accepting, but they want to dig deeper. Related to that, they will ask another question from another dimension. So you have to see, will my answer lead to this? It should not lead to counter question. It should lead to follow-up question, right? So you have to see that. And then all unnecessary sounds and unnecessary words that you have to remove from your answer. People have tendency to say like, like when you are speaking something, you do that unknowingly. Unless somebody has pointed it out, you wouldn't have figured it out. So when you watch your video, see that if it is coherent, whether it is composed, confident, the way it is given should be very, thought-provoking also. It should not be like, I've seen people doing that also. And unnecessary hand movements, right? You have to see if your hand is like going like this or not. It should be like just like this, simple hand movement below the table, right? It should not, your hand should not go, above the table unless you want to illustrate something. With the permission, you can illustrate. Let us say if you want to illustrate about this particular quantum AI chip. So you want to talk about qubit. So there is one qubit here, there is another qubit here. Something like this, maybe you can, if you can illustrate, right? Maybe with the permission. So if you, sir, if you allow me, can I illustrate with my hands or something, right? That always makes them feel good. And the interview in general, an intellectual exercise, but also kind of, you should know that there is, it is not skewed in the sense that, it's not balanced from the perspective of their dominance versus yours. 5 members, far superior in their knowledge and understanding, and on an average they bring 20 to 30 years of experience. So 5 into 20 or 30, right? those many years of experience and knowledge, wisdom will be sitting. So they naturally expect you to respect them, right? And conduct yourself in a way that it is not equal, right? Even if you come from, well, I have seen many, not many, few candidates coming with extremely or extraordinary background also, right? In terms of their exposure, the way they've done things during their academic years, so owing to better upbringing. So in no way you should sound equal to them. The language you use. Somebody who has worked in corporate sector, they tend to use such kind of language. There is no sir in the beginning of the answer, right? So as you know, like okay, like this, right? So not like that. It should be respectful, but that doesn't mean that you are like you should not be like too humble also. Humble yet confident, right? So you should know where to say sir, where to give the pause, and how to make a transition from one idea to another idea. When you are transitioning from one idea to another idea, again, sir, right? And if you want to engage them, like in a conversation, then you should know, as you know, sir, right? Or as it recently happened in a particular incident, give reference to certain things so that they can link or relate to certain things, and then you can engage them. So all these things you have to practice and perform, as part of your. So there is one-on-one mock. Don't entirely depend on one-on-one mock or panel mocks. Go to panel mocks only when you are sufficiently prepared, when you have done well with respect to covering every aspect of the DAF. Sometimes it becomes very discouraging also. The panel mocks, in panel mocks, many people have got bad experience because all the panels will not be balanced and kind in a way that there is also ego. It is like a small big boss house, right? Sometimes, so one wants to have an upper hand over another. If somebody has asked a better question, he wants to ask even better question, right? The objective of the personality test takes a back seat, but their personality gets revealed, right? They want to, and then there is competition in giving feedback also. Psychoanalysis will be there, right? And there was, she is an IAS officer and district collector right now, and in my first batch, she went to Delhi to give a mock interview. At that time, my first batch, I was not, though I had got 210, I was not that much sure of, I had got 210 out of 300 in the old format in 2011. So I used to informally guide students, but I was not taking mock interviews. So I had suggested you go to Delhi, anywhere. I didn't know about the Delhi culture also. She went to one institution there. She maybe came across as a little arrogant or something from their perspective. Then they started doing this psychoanalysis. The way you are behaving is because of your upbringing, right? So your father profession is this, maybe that has impacted the way you are behaving. So she countered, so why are you bringing my father into this or something like that? So she was made to cry and came out crying, and they called me. I said, stop going for any mock interview from now onwards. So try to rely on, because I didn't know which was the good institution giving good mock. Now everyone does everywhere. You have to be careful with respect to that, or you should be so immune and so tough that let them say anything, let them ask anything. You should be smart and intelligent enough to receive only what is sensible, right? And forgive them for telling any insensitive or nonsense things in the interview, right? So if you have that much common sense and be smart, then only you should go to mocks. Don't take every feedback given in the mock as the final word, judgment. Some people do that, right? So because you become little vulnerable going forward, because once you start making sense of the preparation, start imagining, because from now onwards you will be having this constant imagination of you giving UPSC interview because it's a reality now. You are going to do that. So when you go to these mocks, that reality becomes real in a simulated way, and you tend to take seriously whatever they give. So don't do that. You are going to do these mocks, give these mocks to overcome certain issues that you have identified by yourself or with the feedback of your mentors or sensible people. So if you have a confidence issue, right, talking in front of 5 people, so go give multiple mocks to overcome the underconfidence. So you have the issue of not organizing and prioritizing your ideas, right? So you have to prioritize. The most important point must always be given first. You have identified that you have the tendency to say obvious stuff, and then moving forward, that is what usually happens when you have not thought about this previously, right? When you haven't thought about these issues previously, there when you are discovering your answer, like you are preparing, thinking, so you are finding your way to the exact answer. In the process of giving the exact answer, the first few seconds you utter something that is of no value or no significance, right? So if you want to overcome that issue, that even with a slight pause of let's say 3-4 seconds, you want to give the best point, go to mock and practice it. In the feedback, if they say no, you're taking long pause, maybe you can shorten this, maybe they can give something, right? But you should be confident why you have actually gone there. Be happy that if they are happy with the quality of your answer, if they give the feedback that yeah, your answer, the first points were really good, right? So then you have actually achieved why you went to the mock. So like that, it should be the purpose rather than seeing it as the whole actual experience. See, there was one Jaydev, I took 19 or 18 mock law background, mostly to tone down. He was extraordinarily intelligent. I mean, he is still extraordinarily intelligent. I heard that every week he reads 2 or 3 books, even with, he is in UP now. So the answers were to basically, like he was from the debating background. The hands used to go like this and all, like there was aggressiveness about giving the answer, and he had done lots of this moot court debating and everything. So there was lots of aggressiveness, and it used to be intimidating, the answer. So too many details, too many ideas, because you are an avid reader and a blogger. You had the hobby of legal blogging and so many things. So, right, bringing them, there used to be informal language because when you debate, that comes. So that is why it took more marks. There are cases where I've taken like 2 to 3 marks and told people, yeah, like 200 plus, no more marks anywhere. Just go and give the interview. So it depends on the issues that we identify, right? If there are major issues, it will take more than 5, 6, 7 marks. If there are no major issues, you are already good. Then if it is more about body language, if it is more about little mechanics here and there, it is just 2 to 3 marks. But on an average, if you want to give panel marks, right? So maximum 5, my personal suggestion, maximum 5. And go twice to that panel which you think had a good mix of officers, like 1 IAS, 1 IPS, 1 IRS, 1 forest service, maybe 1 from defense, right? And if you think that they were more sensible, more professional, right? So if you think that, try to get second mock interview and see if there is consistency. And if you get the feedback that there is another panel which is good, right, go and give there, to see the consistency between the feedback given in this panel and that panel. What I used to do, I used to take multiple mocks and then send them to see consistency between my feedback and their feedback. So if the feedback used to match, then you have arrived. Stop giving mocks anymore, right? So it is not like mock test, where you keep giving. At least 1 week before your interview, you should stop giving mocks. So 7 days or 10 days prior to your actual interview date, don't give any marks. So from then onwards, it's about, mental conditioning, becoming calm and, developing further passion with respect to what you have mentioned in your DAF and being happy, chilled, watching movies. That phase should be like that before the interview. Totally, you should not be immersed only with reading and writing. You should be, very much chilled. Not needed. So people do that, and if you're strong, then that's fine. But then what happens is that, when you do that, you enter with a bias, right? So prejudice. And based on their background, you might have prepared really well. And if there is not a single question from that particular area, part of your mind is expecting something throughout the interview. Right? You're not totally immersed in that experience. You're still expecting, that thing to come. Nothing comes. So, without your knowledge, all of your answers will be suffering. Right? So, it creates cognitive bias. So, better not to do that. I mean, you can read with academic interest, but don't prepare with respect to, what you learned about them. Better to know about them out of curiosity. I mean, where they worked, what is their work, from which university they have come, whatever it is. But don't let it impact your preparation. See, there is, in most of the cases, there is always context. So, out of context, they rarely ask. So, you should try to figure out through your DAF. If, like you said, legal issues, constitutional, right? So, what is happening in Assam or, in West Bengal? I can link it to legal issue, right? So better to know, better to learn about them. Any other doubts you have? So this part we'll keep it next. You coming and answering questions. And regarding why IAS, right? That question may come, may not come, but have a clarity and see, the very purpose of that question is to know whether you are clear about what you are getting into. What is the motivation, right? And what is the understanding that you have gained, right? Because it's a job interview at the end of the day, but not for any ordinary job, right? So if you are entering into something, you should know about that particular job in and out, in depth, and why you are actually entering into it, right? So it can be triggered because of an experience, right? So you might have gone through certain experience of corruption, certain experience of discrimination, certain experience of exploitation, or positive experience of getting motivation from someone who visited your college, a school, or a family friend, right? So that exposure that you might have got, right, whatever it is, so that plus after that, right, so that is a trigger, the initial motivation or initial experience. So after that, you should know, like, what is that you want to actually contribute, right? So people, there is one answer that which personally I don't like, that what they say is that, they talk about their own skills. Because I have these skills, so I think it will be helpful in IAS. So personally, I don't like that answer. You know why, right? Because you're not yet an expert. It's not a lateral entry, right? that you are already an expert and you are being taken for that. You should be more driven with respect to public service, right? And also the kind of opportunities and challenges that you are open to, because the service provides that kind of opportunities. So from that perspective, you should be. It is not like how you are going to help IAS, right? So think over that particular question again and again. The answer keeps getting refined, and the answer, whoever hears, should be convinced that it's a very genuine answer, right? Honest answer. And if there is lots of confidence behind that answer, the answer usually comes across as a genuine answer, honest answer. So you should have that confidence. When you say something, you should not be doubting your own answer, right? So you doubt your own answer when you haven't really thought about it adequately. You haven't gone through, all the dimensions of that. So then you keep, in your answer itself, there is some element of self-doubt. So when you say something, that self-doubt should not be evident. So take this entire interview process, and in my personal opinion, this is the best phase of UPSC preparation. Right? It is a little liberation before big liberation, from the clutches of so-called this UPSC preparation, something that you enjoy intellectually, right? So keep it this way rather than, again making it rigid and, stressful. Read, enjoy reading, think about them, discuss them, practice your views. If possible, open a blog and, start talking about them. Or maybe you can, Twitter and all I don't recommend. So not from the public. So maybe you can open a personal blog and you can write a diary writing. Maybe you can write in your diary also. Something like freewheeling, right? So there you will go on, discovering what you truly believe and what you don't believe when you keep writing and when you keep discussing. So, and then you may develop certain new interest also. It is fine. Not that you are hooked only to the things you mentioned, right? So it's okay to watch movies now and then. It's okay to travel here and there. And with respect to travel also, I've seen many people mentioning that hobby. They would have visited Nandi Hills and Pavan Durga and Yogange, right? So 3-4 like trekking throughout India. Like they mentioned trekking. Then where did you trek? 3 times. One time to Nandi after lots of waiting, going by car. So don't do that. Trekking, like there are people who do serious trekking, they go to lower Himalayas and they go to northeast, right? So tough terrain and they do that. So there's some people that are very passionate, right? There are some mad people who ride bicycle from here to Bidar, right? From here to Mangalore, right? This is a very serious, passionate hobby. There are people who participate in marathon every year. Right, they run half marathon, full marathon. So if you have something like that, definitely mention. But like now and then visiting something, buying new cycle, riding it for 2 days and then stopping it. So bicycling, cycling or whatever. So don't do all those things. Honesty is the best resort or best policy here. So wish you all the best, and so I'll be here for half an hour. If you have any doubts related to your DAF, you can come and discuss. And this will be continuous also. This is not like the final session. Individually, whichever doubts you have, you can note down my number also. You can do things like send an answer. So for this question, this is what I thought about answer. What do you think about it? I will not give my answer. I will say you can modify this way, right? 99-011 59780 99-011 59780. I keep traveling a lot, like usually long distance. So during that time, I'll have plenty of time to go through your answers. Or if you want to discuss on phone also, I can discuss, right? And when I'm here, we'll be doing one-on-one mocks regularly, and make this as your kind of final attempt, right? So I mean, this is your opportunity. There is not like there is an opportunity. It is opportunity has come your way. I mean, you can actually crack this exam, this attempt, right? This particular phase, you haven't prepared so far. Only if you have given interview previously, you would have done that. So far, you haven't done this, right? So lots of dedication, passion, commitment is required for this particular phase. And if you do this with lots of commitment right now, if you have to give another interview, right, it is going to help immensely, right? I hope you don't have to give another interview. I hope this is going to be your last interview. So all the best. Thank you so much. Thank you.